For quite some time now, one of the most anticipated films of 2026 has been Christopher Nolan's next project, The Odyssey. And earlier this week, the magazine Empire released a number of exclusive stills from this film and from the set while making this film. Let's take a look. First of all, we've got an image here. This is an on-set behind-the-scenes image, and it's showcasing Christopher Nolan, obviously, and his cinematographer. And we also see here what is presumably one of the new IMAX cameras that they developed for this film. Way back at the beginning, when this film was announced and some of the initial details were beginning to be teased and revealed, Christopher Nolan stated that he was working with IMAX to develop new technology for filming this. And one of the main things they were working on was developing a new line of cameras, or at least one camera, but I think multiple cameras, to build them in such a way that these cameras would be much quieter. If you don't know much about IMAX, I myself don't know a ton. One of the main issues that they have when filming IMAX sequences is that the IMAX cameras, given their size and the size of the film stock that they're dealing with, are extremely loud cameras. So it's hard to film dialogue sequences with all this background noise going on, especially because Christopher Nolan isn't a huge fan of ADR. That's why oftentimes when you see a film by Christopher Nolan that features IMAX sequences, they're mainly used for establishing shots and action sequences, and when they flip to dialogue, it goes back to more the scope letterboxed version of the film, and that's because they're filming on a different film stock, sometimes 35mm, more recently it's been pretty consistently 65mm. But what's new about the Odyssey, and what this new technology enabled them to do, is that for this film, the entirety of the film is shot on IMAX. This is, of course, the first time Christopher Nolan has done this, and I think it might be the first time an entire feature film has ever been shot exclusively on IMAX film stock. So I, for one, would already be interested and excited to see the film, regardless of who was directing it or who was in it or even what the plot was, just to see a film that was shot entirely on IMAX cameras. Because the IMAX sequences always look incredible. So to have an entire film that looks incredible in that way is going to be fantastic. I don't think we know a ton about where exactly they were filming, when the still was taken, what the scene is supposed to be, or what the set is supposed to be for. Obviously, we still don't know a ton of details about this film yet, but it looks to be some sort of hut. So it could be on the island of the Cyclops, or perhaps on Calypso's island, or maybe nothing to do with that at all. I am purely speculating here. Next, we have this still, mainly just focused on Matt Damon as Odysseus, but we do see some of the ships here in the background as well, and perhaps the walls of Troy in the distance. It's a little hard to tell what exactly that is. So pretty cool still. It's good to see more of him in costume. I might have expected him to have a slightly larger beard than he does here, but perhaps as the film goes on, that will get longer, as he continues his travels. I'm no Greek historian, but I'd be curious to know from any of the Greek historians who may be watching this video how accurate this costuming is. I know there have been some complaints online in terms of it being a bit more drab than it historically would have been. In particular, kind of the accuracy of this weapon and the type of armor that they're wearing, regardless of the color scheme of it, how accurate that is. But I think it's a pretty cool shot overall. It seems to be a still taken from the film, presumably. Probably cropped, though, because it's not in the IMAX aspect ratio. So yeah, I'd be curious to find out what scene this is associated with. Next, we have the first look, I believe, at Tom Holland as Telemachus. This would be a scene presumably back at Odysseus's house. It lines up and look to some of the other shots that we get, that we'll look at in a moment, that are also presumably from Odysseus's house. So yeah, it's cool to see him in costume in an actual still. I guess perhaps we got a look at him in one of the initial teasers that was released, but I don't know if that teaser's been officially released online yet, or if it was only something that people were able to experience in theaters. And then we get a look at Anne Hathaway as Penelope and Maya Goth as one of her handmaidens, something like that. Again, presumably this is at Odysseus' house. Presumably it is a scene which will take place towards the end of the film, but it is Christopher Nolan. So this kind of gets to something that I've been curious about since the film was announced. The way Christopher Nolan often tells stories is in a non-linear fashion. And even when doing a biopic like he did for Oppenheimer, or a piece of historical, like a historical war movie like he did for Dunkirk, he still manages to bring in that non-linear storytelling to films like that. So I'm curious to see what he's going to do for The Odyssey. Is it going to be told in a purely linear fashion, following the plot and the storyline of the original writing, or is it going to be told in something of a non-linear fashion? I suppose we'll just have to find out. I don't know if there's any way to know unless they reveal it beforehand, but I don't expect that he will. But again, presumably this will take place at the end of the story, but it could be the opening shot. We don't know. But I think the costuming looks pretty cool, and the set looks pretty pretty nice as well. And then we have this scene, which kind of most clearly shows Odysseus and his followers as they are going on their travels, this time in the woods. I'm trying to remember what part of the Odyssey would have taken place in the woods. It might have been the Cyclops Island. It might have been Calypso's Island. It presumably is one of the sort of islands that they visit. But I don't know. We shall find out. The reason I'm thinking maybe the Cyclops Island is because I know they use a wooden stake to blind him, and there's a lot of trees around that they could use to chop down and do that. But overall, this is really cool to get some more exclusive stills. I'm quite excited to see the trailer, the first trailer, whenever it releases. I don't know when that will be exactly. Obviously, the film's not coming out till, I believe, July of 2026. So there still is some time. But with Christopher Nolan projects, they do often start teasing at least initial trailers and things like that quite early on, and they have already sold out multiple theaters for this film as well, even before any trailers or teasers were released. So I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to get more promotional materials like this from now until the film actually releases. But like I said, it remains to be seen. We really can't say for sure right now. But let me know in the comments what you think, what you thought of these stills, what you think we might be getting next by way of teaser or promotional footage or whatever. And as always, thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more movie commentary and reviews.